This channel is supported by truefire. Truefire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. Months and months ago, LeonTodd did a video which I thought was a really good piece of advice, and I kind of wanted to echo it and maybe sort of give my own take on it, but LeonTodd is the guy where this piece of advice came from, and I recognise that it's something I've been doing for years, and I think it's a good starting point if you're new to modelling or building presets and all this sort of stuff. Idea here is that when you're building presets, to have some baseline of consistency. I think this maybe should apply to building presets in general, but in this context, Leon said about keeping the cab the same, especially if you're using these things live, so that you've got like a signature sort of to your tone. By the way, I'm a big fan of John Bernthal. He's my favourite Punisher. Leave yours in the comments. Anyway, keep that cab the same when building presets and throughout a gig, so that you've got some tonal consistency and like a little bit of a baseline. The thing with modelling is that we've got so much variety. This is one of the things that comes along for the ride. It's a real benefit in some ways. But I can remember back in the day when you would be sort of scrolling through presets on a Pod XT. You're like, there's too much variety here. So it's really hard for your ear to determine whether you're liking a tone, whether you're finding it too bright or whatever, because everything has its own totally different sonic signature. Now, an IR is just an EQ with lots and lots and lots of points, right? And most cab modeling in 2025 is going to be IR based, mostly. So that is kind of like the final EQ at the end of our chain, or somewhere in the middle of our chain. And if we use that as like a fixed point that we're going to only really change when we want to, then we can have a little bit more, I think, discerning taste between amp tones, and you're not just kind of stabbing around in the dark so much and thinking, do I prefer that, do I not? If you've got like a consistent cab that you use, for me on the Helix, it is often a Cali V30 using a U67 mic, and the position is 3.9. That's just what I've come up with. What works for me, we'll dig in here, but I guess another thing to consider is maybe the flip side of this. When we're creating tones and we want something different, maybe instead of switching out the amp block, drives, delay, reverb, maybe the cab should be the first place we go to where we're thinking, I actually want something quite different here. This could be like a really impactful area where we can either keep it the same to have some consistency, or completely flip it on its head and go, right, I'm going to go to my cab block first. So it's probably easiest to demonstrate this, first of all, with a more driven tone.
particularly if you were playing this loud through like a speaker, a PA speaker, I think you could find some of these differences kind of jarring. That for me is why I tend to, across different presets, keep this cab roughly the same. So I tend to use 4x12 Cali V30 with the 67 condenser, position 3.9. This high cut is kind of optional. But again, let's just try some things here. I look for in a speaker is something that sort of sounds to me relatively neutral-ish. Accepting, of course, that there is no real way for these things to be neutral. But here's the greenback. It's like a bit of a subtle-ish thing, but at the same time could make a big difference when you're dialing in. That's one of my approaches. I think it's good advice from Leon. And whether you're using like a Voxy or a Marshall-y, just give that a try. I mean, if you're starting to feel like, right, now I definitely want something different, then you can experiment like, well, what if I just tried something that I don't normally do? You know, like a Celestian blue. For a different tone, rather than changing amp, maybe consider changing cab. It could be just as impactful as changing amp model. But like Leon says, you know, having the same cab as sort of like the glue of your tone can be a really good thing for not having something which just jumps through loads and loads of different tones. So for example, like here. Like, it's just potentially too much difference. So instead of that, with whatever modeler you're using, consider, right, well maybe I'm just going to pick a cab that works for me, or an IR, and use that as your glue. Just maybe an idea. Catch you in another video soon. Cheers for stopping by. Thanks to Leon for that great piece of advice.